Recently, I met with some of the leaders of the Republican delegation in Congress, and I told them, you can't stop this from happening. You can say all the bad things you want about China, but nobody in Malaysia or Indonesia or Thailand or Bangladesh hears what you have to say.
We published one of your article about 2 years ago in 2020, and you talk about the beginning of the Asian century. Looking back, how would you characterize that term?
I think it's happening faster than I expected 2 years ago. Recently, I visited Southeast Asia and Hong Kong. It was my first trip since the COVID pandemic, so I hadn't been there for 3 years. I could not recognize some of the cities. They were completely different. In Bangkok, a new skyscraper is going up every day. The sort of merchants who used to have a stall on the street now have space in an air-conditioned high-rise shopping center. It's a different city, huge amounts of income being produced, great deal of wealth. And once you finish the high-speed rail from Laos connecting Bangkok to Yongming Station in Yunnan province, I think there will be a great deal more. So I see Southeast Asia showing explosive growth. India also has very strong growth. India has many challenges, which are a whole other discussion. But yes, I think that Asia has done better than I expected. And the emerging countries of Asia, countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, will be the new tigers of the next decade. They'll repeat the performance of Korea and Taiwan.
In your book, You Will Be Assimilated, published in 2020, you propose the concept of Sino-forming. It's about Chinese experience of urbanizing 600 million people during the past 35 years. And you also said, and I quote, in the next decade, China may even integrate billions more into this virtual empire. Now, in terms of technology shaping the eco-society to the extent of global politics, how would this trend impact the United States and China?
It's very interesting. In the last year, exports to Southeast Asia rose by 20%. In fact, China's exports to the global south have doubled in just 3 years. That's an extremely impressive record. What I call Sino-forming, which is the adoption of Chinese technology and Chinese capital goods infrastructure in developing countries, is happening faster than I expected, particularly in Southeast Asia. And I think in general, that's an impressive achievement. For example, in Indonesia, Chinese companies Huawei and ZTE are building the national broadband system. China is also building a high-speed rail system and other forms of infrastructure. Considering that China's relationship with Indonesia has historically had some challenges, to put it mildly, this is quite an impressive result. And I think it's happening not because Indonesia wants to be an ally of China or there's a great love between Indonesia and China, but because practically China offers the best products and the best expertise. One thing China has done very effectively is to work with developing countries in training local personnel, particularly Southeast Asia, but also elsewhere. And that kind of transfer of knowledge, along with the technology, creates binding economic relationships, which will be to China's benefit for a long period of time. As the global south matures economically, as people who made $2 a day make $10 a day, that will be a major source of growth for both the global south and for countries that export to them. Now, the second part of the question you asked is, what should the United States do? Mm-hmm. Recently, I met with some of the leaders of the Republican delegation in Congress, and I told them, you can't stop this from happening. You can say all the bad things you want about China, but nobody in Malaysia or Indonesia or Thailand or Bangladesh hears what you have to say. The United States does not offer a competitive product in broadband infrastructure, which is really the most important technology for development. So I think the United States could work with companies like Ericsson, Nokia, and Samsung, some of the Japanese companies, and develop alternatives to broadband infrastructure and other technologies and compete with China. I think that the global South would be happy to have more than one provider. And that is a win-win situation. If we do a better job, we'll get the business and we'll develop the influence in that part of the world. And that will require China to compete more effectively. So, in other words, I think we should do more of what China is doing and try to do it better.